Happy Monday, Nashville. Next man up, 102.5 The Game, broadcasting live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. I am Jake Lyman, joined today by Paul Kuharsky on the show for the debut of the program. Excited to have you here, Paul.
I'm a guy who needs help with his on and off button. Congratulations on the show. Happy to be part of the big debut and excited to talk about all the subjects at hand and more.
Yes, going to be a lot of fun. Again, the name of the show is Next Man Up. So we're going to be rotating people in here from, Titans. We'll have Paul. TD's going to be in every single Tuesday. We'll get Preds people in here. Max Hers will be in here once the Pred season gets going. Vandy, we'll be all over the place, but we're always going to be right here from 9 to noon. I will be in here, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Connor Newt is with us as well. Connor, maybe sometimes it's Connor in here with me. Who knows? But
who knows?
It'll be a lot of fun. So excited to get started again. 9 to noon, next man up. It'll be me and somebody. We will have Paul in here pretty regularly, hopefully, and TD again will be every Tuesday.
We will see.
Yes. Plenty to get into today. Lots went on with the Titans over the weekend. 2 padded practices on Saturday and Sunday. Seems like one was better than the other, to say the least. We'll also get into the Bristol Speedway Classic, which lots going on there on Saturday night between the Reds and Braves, and then they finished it up yesterday and much more. I did want to start here. An article on ESPN today, Paul, came out. Jeremy Fowler put a couple of news and notes out about the Titans. Mentioned the Titans maybe shopping around in the quarterback market, and on the defensive side of the ball, maybe cornerback, maybe edge rusher. Do you see the Titans possibly making some veteran additions at this point?
Well, the biggest nugget out of that was a name, Preston Smith,
right,
as edge help. Look, Ali Gay had a big day. I don't remember if it was yesterday or the day before. Flashed, had an interception. Won some one-on-ones. That's the first noise that we've heard out of Ali Gay. Jalen Harrell, very quiet. I think, they went into camp hoping that one of those two guys would splash. Ward, who they signed quickly after the retirement. Kind of threw them off. Jihad Ward, not been particularly noisy, and it's hard to expect sacks from any of those three guys. So you're talking about after your first two, which are Femi Aladejo, it's not necessarily the one, Draymond Jones. I think those are the base guys with an emphasis on run stopping, which they really need to get back to, and which is part of this being bigger. There's a very circular thing about being bigger. Yes, you're going to stop the run better being bigger. Also, what was available to you was bigger because the bendy, burning edges that you'd like to have who are going to go get the quarterback the way that the top edges go get the quarterback weren't available to you. They don't get to free agency. You didn't draft one with the number 1 pick or with the trade down, and you traded out of a spot where you could have got the BC kid, perhaps.
Yeah.
And the best guy there in your eyes was Femi. Your third edge is Arden Key, who is that kind of guy on the smaller side, who's a streaky pass rusher. So there'll be 3 games where you say, hey, Arden Key's getting to the quarterback. And then there'll be 3 games where you say, what is Arden Key doing? And he's getting run on.
Yeah, was it the Lions game and Commanders game or something like that where he had 4 sacks in 2 weeks and everybody's like, maybe Arden Key's figuring it out, and then he just disappeared for a month. So,
but these guys who are out there, Preston Smith, Matthew Judon is another one who you wonder about. They're on that 30 border. Preston Smith is he'll be 33 during the season. And you look at his sacks, he had 8 in 23, he had 8.5 in 22, he had 9 in 21. His big year was all the way back in 1912. Last couple of years, 4.5, 2.5, 2. Are you excited about that?
Not really. And that's why I wonder, seeing that name Preston Smith, the Titans have number one waiver priority. Like, does it make more sense to just see what other teams cut? Like, I don't know if Preston Smith, there's a reason he's not on a roster right now. Maybe it's that he's a little more expensive than some of the other back of the end roster options that you have, but you got number one waiver priority. Maybe it makes more sense if you're trying to fill in that third, fourth, fifth edge rusher position. You just wait and see what other teams drop off there when we drop down to 53.
I think you have to factor in too, like what happens if Jones or Oladejo or Key get hurt, right? So it's one thing if you're looking for a fourth to be your fourth, but what if you're looking for a fourth who might have to be your third? You know, I think you have to factor that in. And then what kind of leadership are you getting? I don't know Draymond Jones very well yet. He spoke very well the few times that I've spoken to him. But he's also not a guy that's, he's topped out at 6.5 sacks. He's not been a big-time rusher. Preston Smith has been a big-time rusher, brings maybe that mentality a little bit more to, I'm not big on hiring a guy to be a coach or a mentor or whatever. He needs to be a producer first and foremost. But if he could come in and be somewhat of a producer and also help the tone there, I don't know. They're not going to be great guys getting cut. They're going to be developmental guys too.
Yeah.
And this is a very developmental team.
Yeah. I mean, you look back at maybe Cameron Wake when they brought him in. He was older than Preston Smith and Matthew Judon, but he was the veteran presence, but he did produce at times. Obviously,
and he had gas in the tank for an older guy. He was a unique physical specimen type of guy. At corner, I think it's a little bit of an indictment of the young guys. Marcus Harris has shown up a little bit, but he's been playing outside, not inside. So behind McCreary, and I wrote about McCreary yesterday, who's kind of changed his attitude a little bit going into a contract year. But you see Gabe Judy-Lally there. He had a really good camp last year, but then didn't really factor into things for them too much, right? You can't count on Snead for sure. I think they love Brownlee and should. Daryl Baker, to me, is a riser. But the depth after that, they gave decent money to some of these young guys. Talked to Tony Oden, the new cornerback coach, about them yesterday. He's high on them collectively. But I thought a couple of them shined in the offseason. I haven't seen them emerging. I think games will tell a story about Jalen Kimber and
Jamari Harris,
the other Harris, and Davian Ross, and but I think they expect one of those guys to emerge, and I think they'll still be patient on seeing what emerges there. But probably decent corners pop free,
right?
Everybody's loaded up at corner in camp and has to cut somebody like
that. Is true, and it's just strange how fast corner went from one of the deeper positions on the roster to so thin. Heading into the offseason, I think you felt good. The Snead legal issues hadn't come to light yet, and you thought he would be healthy. You had Chidobe Awuzie at that point, and then you cut him. So you felt good about your top four outside corners being Snead, Awuzie, Brownlee, and Daryl Baker. That's a pretty good group.
Yeah.
Now you got question marks at a lot of those spots, and you haven't really brought anybody in to fill that in. So
I do really like Denard Wilson as a cornerback guy. That's his background. I think, he helped develop Brownlee in a big way, Baker in a big way. So if they do have some talent in those younger guys, I have maybe one of my biggest faith spots is him off of that 1 year, helping develop some of those young guys. But I think they'll be watching the wire. The other one, quarterback, I don't think anything good's coming free at quarterback. I think Brandon Allen, I think people are satisfied with what he's doing at practice, but it's practice. The game success of Brandon Allen, very poor. And I think the Will Levis thing came as a surprise. I think it would have been a better backup with upside. But here's my thing. I think they're content if Ward gets hurt to take the lumps that come with a bad backup. That'll mean a lesser record and a better draft pick. But you really stall the development of everybody else if Brandon Allen's in the line. What's that do for these fourth-round receivers? What's that do for offensive line protecting? They should be able to protect everybody, but you get my drift. All these other guys' development is keyed around Ward. Ward goes out and you say, we'll take our lumps with Brandon Allen and take the losses and take the draft pick, and then the whole program's stalled.
It's a good point. It is. And I think the Titans, you're right. Will Levis came as a surprise. They had an opportunity to get a quarterback in free agency better than Brandon Allen, whether that's, a Jameis Winston or somebody of that tier instead of Brandon Allen, who, you're right, when he's gotten into games, it really hasn't gone very well. So that is a question. If Cam Ward does get hurt, or
if he's terrible, like a lot of times
right.
rookie quarterbacks, need a month off somewhere along the way. If you're the opening day starter and the first month is miserable, you'd like to pull back and say, all right, we're going to, sometimes you find a tweak and you say, his hamstring's bothering him, and we're going to give him a little time here.
I mean, it happened in year 2 for Bryce Young, but you can see the difference that made for him. He had the veteran quarterback, Andy Dalton, who could come in and at least keep the ship afloat, and you're not running Brandon Allen out there every single week. So it'll be interesting. I don't know if there are going to be any real quarterbacks of value who come available. Jake Browning's the one who people talk about just because of the Brian Callahan connection. And I don't know if he comes available, but
they're not cutting him. And Jake Browning, Cincinnati stayed afloat the year that 2 years ago when he got hurt, when Burrow got hurt, because Jake Browning was good. So I don't know. People say that so casually. I mean, why would Cincinnati get rid of Jake Brown?
Did they not just acquire another quarterback?
Yeah, they just acquired,
they
cut Logan Woodside in order to add, I can't remember who it was.
Desmond Ridder.
Right. Desmond Ritter's not better than Jake Brown.
Right. It seems very marginal at best. If you're going to choose one or the other, I would assume they're going to go with the guy who has familiarity in their system.
Jake Browning's locked in as their second, and they have a good 2-quarterback situation. Teams that have good 2-quarterback situations aren't looking to get out of good 2-quarterback situations.
Jeremy Fowler, again, of ESPN, put out a couple of notes about the Titans, said that right now seem to be happy with Brandon Allen, but maybe could look into another quarterback if somebody was to come available. Then also mentioned edge and cornerback, a place to look for veteran additions as well. Mentioned Preston Smith by name. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you want to text or call, we'd love to hear from you. Our phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Again, we are off and running with the new program here from 9 to noon on 1025, The Game Next Man Up. I'm Jake Lyman, joined today by Paul Kuharsky. Plenty to get to. Coming up next, it was a bad day for the offense on Sunday. Brian Callahan, according to multiple reports, had some choice words for his offense after yesterday's practice. We'll get into that coming up next. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky, Next Man Up, 1025 The Game.
Seems like the first team offense has not really scored a lot of touchdowns in the red zone so far in camp in those periods. Is that an area of concern?
Concern? No. We've been in the high red zone a bunch. Haven't worked down to the low. We got more red zone work today, so actual focused red zone work where we're starting down inside the 12. But yeah, I would like to see more movement in the red zone in the periods that we've had. But we got a lot of work to do in the red zone in general. That's probably one of the harder areas. A lot of our early focus has been on third downs, which has been great. And now we'll shift into the red zone today and get some more work. But yeah, we got work to do there for sure.
That was Brian Callahan yesterday talking about the struggles for the offense in the red zone so far during training camp. And yesterday was a bad day overall for the offense, leading to what we've heard was a profanity-filled tirade, I believe were the words of Terry McCormick on what Brian Callahan did after practice in the direction of the offense yesterday. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky, Connor Newt, next man up here on 102.5 The Game. PK, you were out there. Thoughts on what the offense looked like yesterday after what was kind of widely regarded Saturday as one of the better offensive practices so far in training camp? Felt like it was a big step back based on the reports from yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, they did nothing really to sustain it. Just no first down coming out of a backed up situation. Really did nothing in their final two possessions. Wyatt had Cam as 5 of 14 in team. That's 36%. That's not going to cut it. Everything's situational. Woods and Hooker both had really fast breaks from the middle of the secondary on. I was talking to Dave McGinnis. He talked about that break being when the quarterback's second hand comes off the ball. And I talked to Hooker, and he said his break came before his Cam's hand came off the ball. Some familiarity with the routes and the splits, but these guys are getting a good read on what he's doing. They need to collect those picks, just a really bad offensive day. And there are too many. There's not, Robbie was using the word traction. There's not offensive traction going on with this team right now. They're off today. They have a lighter day tomorrow with walkthroughs, presumably. And then they're on the field Wednesday here, and then they fly, and they're on the field Thursday in Tampa. And, you're going to have to step it up to not get their faces rubbed in it in Tampa Bay. It could bring out the best in what they're doing, jolt them to life, or it could be a real realization of just how bad things are. It's not a good football team right now. You could talk about the defense, every offensive loss is a defensive win, but you have to contextualize that. And there've been a lot of times where we've seen, units or the defense as a whole, or guys, Arden Key was winning like crazy against Andre Dillard, 2 years ago. And we were putting down, we were putting him down for 50 sacks, and it wasn't about him; it was about Dillard. So you've got to be cautious about how you go about these things. It'll be good to get some added context about what the Bucs do, but the Titans are throwing. Talked about throwing the kitchen sink at Cam. There's still, I don't want to say some degree of reservation, but that's still your quarterback on the other side of that. For Todd Bowles, it's not his quarterback on the other side of that.
Right. I was about to go there of, we're going to find out an answer to this question on Thursday, I think, of we're throwing the kitchen sink at Cam Ward and we're making it really hard for him. Is that an excuse for why Cam Ward's not playing well, or is that actually what's happening? Is that they're actually making things really difficult and disguising everything for him? I think Thursday we're going to find out a lot about whether it is the Titans defense making it hard or if Cam Ward is really just struggling to get going.
Yeah, and I'm sure Tampa will throw a lot at him too, but that's life in the big city, and he's got to figure more out faster. Nick Holtz said when he talked on Saturday, there's an answer on every play. There's a throw on every play. So when there's a throw on every play and you're going 5 for 14, he's not finding it.
5 for 14 is not good. And that's not the first time that he's been sub 50% in team drills so far in training camp, which is, it's not ideal. I wanted to ask you, as someone who has been around for all of these young quarterbacks for the Titans, do you remember how this compares to, Marcus or Jake Locker, and how easy it was for them to transition into the NFL? Like, are there similar speed bumps for all these guys, or is this a little bit unique when it comes to Cam Ward?
Yeah, I'm a bad guy for memory on stuff like that.
I know it was 10 years ago.
I get that question a lot, and I couldn't tell you how the first week of rookie Marcus Mariota or rookie Vince Young or rookie Jake Locker were. I do remember, though, like, if you're looking for a statement moment, Vince Young had one. They were in Clarksville at Austin Peay for the start of his rookie year. And we've talked a lot about kind of the lack of electricity, which I think got better over these last 2 days, the weekend. But Vince Young threw an interception, I can't remember to who, over the middle, and the guy was bringing it back, and Vince Young put his shoulder into him. That was a real eye-opening moment that kind of showed, like, all right, well, in his bad moments, he's not going to put up with it. He's certainly not going to let somebody bring a pick back if he can help it. Has there been a moment that has, defined Cam's first week the way that, and I don't know what stage of camp that was. I think they were only away for the first 2 weeks of camp that year in Clarksville. There hasn't been a moment like that. Does there have to be a moment? No. Is this a gradual process and all of that? Yes. And look, I urge people constantly not to make too much out of it. At the same time, what we have to talk about on a daily basis is what unfolded on a daily basis, or what's unfolded up to this point. Yeah. And what's unfolded up to this point hasn't been very good on the offense.
It comes with the territory of being the number 1 overall pick at quarterback, that everything you do is going to be analyzed. And the good days, I think there's going to be a response of, wow, maybe this is a big step in the right direction. But it just so happened his best day of camp happened on a Saturday, where no one really got a chance to talk about it, and then came back 5 of 14 the next day.
Yeah. And the other thing, he spoke Friday, maybe. But it was the first time we talked to him after things had gone poorly. And John Glennon and I were walking over there to the press conference area, and we're like, this is going to be interesting. It's kind of our first taste of him after things haven't gone well. How's he going to be? And then when he was done, we're like, all right, where was that on the defensive meter? And it was pretty high.
Yeah,
it was pretty high. He was not, he gave the mid answer again, but the mid answer wasn't about him as much as it was about the offense. He was defensive about the tipped balls. He had said in an article that was published earlier in the day in The Athletic that the NFL isn't really welcoming him. I don't know what kind of parade he's expecting. He said very strongly he doesn't care what the media says, right? He had told us previously they only talks to 5 people outside of the building. One of them's his dog, his Rottweiler, right? But then I'm not welcomed into the NFL. Sounds like I have listened to all of this stuff about how I haven't really been talked about in the media. And as the number 1 pick overall, it kind of got glossed over. So which is it? That sounds like you're listening. You're listening to your friends tell you that you've been undercovered or whatever. It was not a great press conference for him. And those things have a way of kind of foretelling how a guy's going to be.
It's fair to say it's been a less than stellar start to Cam Ward's rookie season so far. But as you said, it's early and these things do take time. The progress isn't going to be linear for Cam Ward.
Absolutely.
It'll be, maybe 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And this week's a big week for him. And we're going to get into that coming up next. The joint practice where he's in a new area. He's never practiced down in Tampa before. He's facing new defenses.
Tampa's not welcoming him.
Right. They're not.
When he says the NFL's not welcoming,
right.
It would be good if he went to another NFL building to find.
Yes, that is true.
Made that declaration.
Like, I understand the defense is trying to make it hard on him here in Nashville, but they care about him. They want him to be good. Tampa doesn't want him to be good. They're going to be trying to make things really difficult on him on Thursday. So we'll talk about that coming up next. Again, Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky, Connor Newt, next man up. 102.5 The Game and Souls for Souls have teamed up for a back-to-school fundraiser, Souls for the 615, to provide new shoes for kids experiencing homelessness in Nashville. Help a child in Middle Tennessee step into the new school year with confidence by donating $20 for a new pair of athletic shoes. For more information and to donate, visit thegamenashville.com/shoes. Souls for the 615 is sponsored by Macero and 12 South. Go check them out for handcrafted cocktails, bold plates, great happy hour, and elevated hospitality. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky, next man up. 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
now, and it's like we have our own install. So, if it's install 5 and that's a blitz day, whatever blitzes we have or different looks, we don't run it. So we've been throwing the kitchen sink at him, okay, in terms of what we're doing, because we're trying to get better. And he's done an excellent job. Certain looks he hasn't seen, but when they come up throughout the course of the season, he'll have answers. So, we throwing the kitchen sink at him, and the guy comes back every day. He's resilient. And I like where he's at. He's a hell of a competitor. He can make all the throws. You've seen it out there today. Great touch on the deep ball. So Cam just keeps getting better and better, and then he learns from his mistakes as well.
That was Denard Wilson throwing the kitchen sink at Cam Ward in practice so far during training camp. Ward has had his good days, but for the most part, there's been some struggles as he gets introduced into the NFL over the last couple of weeks. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky, next man up here on 102.5 The Game. Ward has one more practice here in Nashville before heading down to Tampa and joint practices with the Buccaneers. First of 2 straight weeks with joint practices. Paul, I think these 2 weeks are going to really show us how ready Cam Ward is for week 1 against the Broncos. The preseason games, too, getting out there in a real NFL stadium in uniform in front of a crowd, those will be important, too. But we were just talking about the joint practices. Like, yeah, Denard Wilson's going to say that, and they're throwing the kitchen sink at him and says he looks excellent. But like you said, Todd Bowles, he's going to throw the kitchen sink at Cam Ward, too, and they're not trying to keep Cam Ward's confidence up if you're the Buccaneers. They're hoping that he has a horrible day on Thursday and their defense makes a ton of plays.
Yeah, and 2 practices until his preseason debut. I don't think there's any circumstance where he doesn't play in that game. Atlanta the next week, it will be after 2 joint practices. I could see him playing very little or even not at all in that game after those 2 practices. But, I'm sure in the game they'll keep things simple, and you don't know who the Bucks will play. Against the Bucks, he's got to be confident and crisp, aware. But like I said, Holtz said there's a throw to be made on every play. And I think what they really want him to do is a better job of figuring out when to be aggressive and when to not. And I'm sure, at least on a subconscious level, he's looking to impress, right? He's looking for the kind of moment I said he doesn't have, and he wants to wow people and dazzle, and he knows the reaction he'll get out of completing a deep ball or scrambling and creating something. And sometimes it's just wiser to check it. And I mean, there are plenty of times he hasn't been reluctant to check it, but I think times he's gotten himself into trouble, he's maybe been striving to do maybe a little bit too much.
Yeah, I think you're right. It may not even, it's probably subconscious for him of he's the number 1 pick and he wants to make that play like in the offseason program, that deep ball to Calvin Ridley, that got so much run on social media, and it's like Titans fans are rejoicing in the streets thinking they finally found their guy. He really hasn't had that moment in training camp yet. And after a couple of tough days, you can see him maybe getting frustrated and trying to force something. I think he just needs to stack some days together where you feel good coming out of it. Right now, Saturday was supposedly his best practice of training camp, and I think he had one more the first week that was pretty good. But outside of that, it's been pretty inconsistent. This week, it'd be nice to see a good practice on Wednesday and the open practice, and then go down there, and he doesn't have to light the world on fire in the joint practice against Tampa, but don't throw 3 interceptions, look like you're playing within the rhythm of the offense. I think this week is really important to gain that confidence, because if it keeps slipping and you joint practice, preseason game, go to Atlanta, and you could end up losing all that confidence that Cam Ward says he has so much of.
Callahan, and I think Holtz was with them, talked to Cam for a long time after practice yesterday. So I think after that explosion where he said, this offense, this was a bleepy bleep offense, bleep, bleep. I thought there was a long conversation there. Now I'm sure that kind of long conversation would go on in the building anyway, but you'd like to see today's a day off, I'm sure they want a combination of guys. That was 5 padded practices in 6 days. So, you're coming in for treatment if you need treatment or regeneration, but also, go get your head. I think they want guys to find a measure. Go get your head out of it. For Cam, it would probably be good for him to get his head out of it for a day. That's not how he's wired. And he's probably going to be in there looking at whatever they're doing tomorrow, which is probably a walkthrough. But I wouldn't be surprised if Callahan, Holtz, Hardigree are saying, "Hey, go to a movie or take your girlfriend on a date or something, and get your head out of it for half a day at least," which would be, I think, good for him. I'm kind of curious. I think the fans have had unreasonable expectations. A good segment of the fan base, the loud fan base, unreasonable expectations of him. But I think they had very unrealistic expectations on shifting to a different picture of Restrepo. And the Restrepo noise has gone down. I think people have finally listened and they realize that Restrepo is catching a lot more passes from Tim Boyle than he is from Cam Ward. Cam Ward, I would say, none. All right. I tweet out once in a while something that Restrepo's doing to indicate where he is in the pecking order. And I think all but the craziest Xavier Restrepo fans are maybe realizing, all right, he's no roster.
He's not making the team.
So I'm asking you, in your perception of hearing from people and being about town and stuff, do you feel like, and I'm not saying it should sway the teeter-totter all the way from like Cam is our savior to Cam is a bust, but a more realistic, this is going to be a process and take time, and I should ease up on the pedal about Cam Ward.
Yeah, I think it's easy to overinflate these guys in the offseason when they're not actually on the field. But for a rookie quarterback, you're going to come in and you're going to take some licks facing an NFL defense for the first time. I've always said that this year it's not about wins and losses. It's about, at the end of the year, do you feel like you made the right decision in drafting Cam Ward number 1 overall? And right now, obviously he's not off to the best start, but you have to realize it's August 4th. Like, we're going to 4 months from now in December, if he's on the bench or if he's coming off a 3 interception game and it's like there's not any development happening, I think that's when you can start to be concerned that, man, they may have really botched this. But it's August. Let's let him actually play some preseason games, get some joint practices in, and let's see where he is heading to Denver for week 1, because that's when we can really start to get an impression of what this guy is. But obviously right now, I think expectations are starting to be lowered because of the way that he started training camp.
And on the Callahan front, look, he needs time too, and I don't know why anybody would think he's inauthentic. Like, I know they played that preseason speech where he had his hat on backwards, and that got a lot of attention, and that seemed a little out of character for him. Not that he raised his voice and all of that, just the delivery was a little weird. But that's the only time I've seen anything that felt out of character for Brian Callahan, who's incredibly sincere and authentic. So like Robbie and Rex Road had a guy call in and said, I think him blowing up at the offense yesterday seemed premeditated. I don't know, based on what evidence? I would have loved to have been around when that call came in. Based on what evidence? Like, there was nothing premeditated about it. He reached a boiling point on a bad day and he let him have it, which is what a lot of coaches do. He's prone to do it less, so it's more noteworthy when he does it. But if you think Brian Callahan, had a on his script tucked in his pocket, yell at guys if there's an opportunity today, that's preposterous. Let's move this station away from crazy conspiracy theories now. It's a perfectly opportune time for that.
Right. Just because Brian Callahan isn't Mike Vrabel doesn't mean that he doesn't get after these guys. Like we've seen it. The Jets game last year, CBS caught him letting Will Levis had it.
I mean, And Latham said yesterday, we went 3-14 last year. You think there wasn't plenty of this? You guys may not have seen it, but it was there. And Kuharsky said, you kind of felt like it was coming the way we practiced today.
And I'm looking at the YouTube chat here, and it's all these people. They're putting who's going to be the head coach after Brian Callahan gets fired. Again, it's August 4th. I'm not saying Brian Callahan has done a good job since he's been here. You go 3-14, there's going to be questions about your job security. But let's give him a chance this year. I don't think it's been as disastrous as, when Wisenhunt was here, at least to this point. So, if you're going into week 7 and you're 1-5, sure, I think there becomes legitimate calls for maybe a change being made, but it's still 2 weeks into training camp. There is plenty of time to sort some of this stuff out, which needs to be sorted out, of course. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'd love to hear from you. You can text or call. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We're going to pivot quickly here to the Speedway Classic that happened over the weekend between the Braves and Reds. Rained out on Saturday after they tried to get the game in, did finish it yesterday. We've got some thoughts on that. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky here on Next Man Up, 102.5 The Game. This isn't just a concert, it's a cause. Trinitix Rock the Cradle helps give fragile newborns a stronger start and keeps mom close when it matters most, with Tim McGraw live on stage. And your support behind every beat, Ascension St. Thomas is turning music into healing. Tickets are on sale now at rockthecradlenashville.org. Next man up, 102.5 The Game, Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky with you on this Monday. Connor Newt throwing it back to Cars with is it Get Real Gone? Is that Real Gone? Something like that?
Sheryl
Crow. There we go.
That's a great tune.
It is. The opening scene of Cars, for those of you out there. I know Connor's a big fan of that movie. Pivoting away from football for a second. Over the weekend, really cool event scheduled at Bristol Motor Speedway, the MLB Speedway Classic, Braves and Reds playing at Bristol Motor Speedway. Second time that there's been an event like this. The battle at Bristol back in 2016 between Virginia Tech and Tennessee. I was actually at that game, and it shocked me to hear of how horrible everything went for them on Saturday night, because when I went, I was younger, so maybe I didn't notice quite as much of this, but I thought the battle at Bristol was a phenomenally run event. I didn't notice any issues, but we saw all these reports coming out from Bristol on Saturday night. The rain has come in. They delayed the game. They've run out of food. They've run out of merchandise. And at the very end of it, they tried to play the game. The field gets absolutely soaked. They have to call it and reschedule for Sunday. I was very surprised to see that this was as much of a mess as it was. Obviously, you can't predict the weather, but it ended up being pretty horrible for Bristol Motor Speedway.
Well, weather aside, which they're trying to really force it to get the game in, I think you're smarter to read the forecast and get rid of it quickly. Now, I understand the logistics outside there with 90,000 people and that many cars and people coming to the game is going to be very difficult. They come in more sporadically because people are tailgating and everything, and then you're leaving all at once, and you don't want to do that twice.
It's a good point.
But, baseball games get delayed, postponed, canceled. So that's the first big thing. And then, you have to be ready for a delay. It sounds like even if it wasn't delayed, they didn't have hot dog buns on hand. They didn't have cheese for nachos. And this place, I read a piece at sportsillustrated.com by Jeff Carr, who covers the Reds. He talked about how Speedway's known for, and I don't know, what you were eating or drinking when you were there for the Vols game, but the place allows bags and soft-sided coolers for people to bring their stuff, and their concessions are generally secondary. Or you're getting their, maybe you can even bring your own beer. I don't know, but you can bring food for sure. So Major League Baseball, instead of embracing what the place is and does, says, no bags, no soft-sided coolers. You're going to spend your money in here. And then they have not only not enough, it's a place built for concessions to be supplemental. They make them primary. And then they're under supplied. It's just no foresight. This would be the most frustrating. I'm frustrated as it is from how far? 300 miles away, whatever it is. For a major league product to be so minor league in its execution is just reprehensible. And it's such bad treatment of fans. And this is what I say to fans. Like, if you're considering going to something like this, nowadays, it seems to me, you have to expect 50-50 odds of it being crap. And I don't understand why fans think, well, being part of this 90,000 thing would be really cool, and I want to be there, and I'm going to take the chance that it's crap. I would be absolutely miserable to have gone to this and gotten a hot dog with no bun.
And sit in the rain for 3 hours before they finally decided to move it. I mean,
Fox was broadcasting, by the way, and not knowing what was going on, while the video board behind him said the game was delayed. So also Major League Baseball and Bristol and Fox can't communicate.
It was a mess. I mean, I was watching the broadcast and I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw it said game postponed to 1:00. And then Kevin Burkhardt comes on. He goes, now, some people are saying that the game's going to be played at 1:00. That would be the plan, but we haven't gotten there yet. I'm like, then why are people
They should be
reporting
first to know.
Right.
Right.
That should be the first call when they decide to postpone that game is, hey, Fox, tell your broadcasters to let everyone know that the game's been postponed. It should have been so much easier than this. And not even to mention the effect it had on the baseball game. The Braves were going to pitch Spencer Strider, but he warmed up and they delayed it. So they decided, we're going to bring in another guy.
Scrap him. They started a reliever.
Right. Just did a bullpen game. He pitched 1 inning before they had to postpone the game. So they had to bring a AAA guy, Hurston Waldrop, to drive 3 hours from Gwinnett, Georgia to come up and pitch the game on Sunday. Like, it just an absolute mess. At least they had the foresight to start the series on Thursday through Saturday and have the ability to play it Sunday. But overall, I don't see how this could have gone much worse. Sunday was cool. I mean,
did you watch it?
I did.
How was it? Like,
it was cool. Like when Eli White hit the 2 home runs and it's like they've got the car going around the track. Like, that was kind of cool. Overall, I don't know if this is going to be something the MLB tries to go back to. I think if they're going to do one of these like gimmicky type games, the Little League one is awesome. I love that they do the Williamsport game every year. And
Field of Dreams.
Go back to Field of Dreams. I thought the Field of Dreams game was one of the coolest things that Major League Baseball has done in a long time.
Except for the White Sox winning it. It was great. No, but I think their intention is to be there. They were remodeling something there and it was going away for 2 years. So then they went to Rickwood Field in Birmingham and that was cool. This isn't like in that slot, is it?
I don't think so. I think they can learn from this, obviously, and hopefully the next time they go somewhere new, it's better than this. But I saw the group at Bristol Motor Speedway. They want to bring a hockey game there, and that's fine. I don't know if I'd want to watch a hockey game in a racetrack. Like,
thing is, you're far enough. I went to a Stadium Series game in Yankee Stadium.
Yeah,
I was talking to JT Runke at practice yesterday, and he had been at Citi Field, I think, and has planned and had been here at Nissan Stadium, has plans to go to Tampa, which is a really risky one, right?
Yeah.
But we agreed, like, for me at Yankee Stadium, and I went to that one, which was during Super Bowl week, so they took a NFL media contingent there. So it was treated like royalty. It was in a box, so you could pop in and out of the box.
That's great.
But I thought it would be impossible to really follow the game based on the distance and the puck being tiny and everything. And I figured you'd be really watching it on TV or just kind of following the atmosphere, but not following the puck. And we saw the puck well. And I thought it was a great one-off event. Now, I was having the night of my life because I was in the Yankees dugout and I was standing on Yankee Stadium covered grass, up against the glass. But I thought as a one-off event, it was tremendous. I think you put that where you're at least the span of the racetrack away from it, and you're really testing the distance thing. Yeah. Really testing.
I mean, say,
the puck is small.
The Battle of Bristol for football, which would be the one that you would think would fit the best.
Yes.
It was still kind of hard to see. Like, we were probably about halfway up right along the side, and you could tell what was going on. It's a football game. It's a lot easier to follow. I don't know if hockey would work.
Now, I got a friend, and maybe you and your buddies were doing a similar thing. He was just like, I'm taking my sons to this. I want us to be able to say we were there.
That's what it was.
It's a historic thing for my football team, and we're going.
It was me, my dad, my uncle, and my cousin who all went. So it was same thing. We're Virginia Tech fans, so obviously didn't leave as happy as the Vols fans did that night. But I thought it was a really cool event, and it is disappointing to see that the second attempt at a sporting event in Bristol Motor Speedway just didn't go quite as well.
What were the logistics like in terms of getting in and out of there?
It was a mess getting out. Like, the game probably ended 11 o'clock, and I don't know if we even left the parking lot until close to 1 a.m. Like, I think it was a mess getting out, but It was fun. You know, we tailgated from about 8 a.m. to the game starting, and they had, you know, pregame concerts. I think John Party and Sam Hunt played. So it was a really cool experience. But yeah, the logistics, not exactly ideal.
All right. So my top bucket list thing is probably a Yankees World Series game.
Yeah.
And if you told me I had to spend 2 hours in a parking lot to get out afterwards, it would make me really have to consider.
Especially you don't know whether your team's going to win or not. And, you know,
I'm all right. I mean, you know, that's a coin flip.
Right.
Or last year, way worse than a coin flip.
615-737-1025. You have thoughts on the Bristol Motor Speedway Classic over the weekend. We'd love to hear from you. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll get back into the Titans coming up next. The energy over the weekend apparently was a little bit better. We'll get into that and why maybe the energy hasn't been quite to the level the Titans may want it so far. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky, Connor Newt, 1025 The Game. Next minute. Hour number 2 on this Monday. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky with you today, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Fun first hour. Again, if you missed the top of the show, new show here from 9 to noon. I'll be with you every day here on Next Man Up, but we'll rotate people in and out. Paul will be here, TD on Tuesdays, and plenty more voices around Nashville. Excited to get started. We are off and running today. Let's get back into the Titans. Energy has been a big talking point so far in training camp with, the first couple of regular non-padded practices. There was talk of energy is low, and then the pads came on. You thought maybe that would fix it, and it really didn't. Seems like, based on reports, and PK, you were out there, did it feel like the energy was better over the weekend, and that maybe you started to see the juice that was lacking early on in training camp?
Yeah, I thought actually the last 2 days, Saturday, Sunday, things picked up. Can't really explain it. You just you feel it or you don't. Now, Brian Callahan did not agree with the idea that there was not sufficient urgency. But I wrote about it. I think on Friday. This is the second time this camp. I wrote on opening day of camp about how the offense is keyed around timing, and that Cam had very good timing on opening day. And then the second day, the offense had terrible timing. I retweeted the story and I said, wrote about the Titans keyed around offensive timing, was not good today. Going back to it, I wrote urgent or uneventful, considering the Titans' quiet start to camp. That was August 1st. So that was Friday, right? And then the next 2 days, and I'm not in any way suggesting I had anything to do with it, but the next 2 days, it was better. And it was overdue, I think, to be better. And I'm not looking for trash talking or fights or whatever. I was saying, when they make a play and there's a reaction to the play in the moment, that didn't seem to carry over into that series, the next play or anything. Everything seemed to be kind of independent of everything else. And that is uncommon to me. I picked one play. Kevin Winston popped somebody in the middle of the field that I thought was a borderline hit at the stadium. And it didn't turn into anything. There was no excessive whooping from the defense.
Right.
Again, I'm just talking about it. I'm not saying there has to be. I'm just using this because it's evidence of how things have been consistently to that point. And there was no offensive guy running to defend the guy who got popped. And then nothing came out of it. And so I had a couple kind of reasons that I thought these things weren't happening. These things, which I do think picked up in the last couple of days, but I don't think we've considered some of the reasons, some of the things that are going on. This is a 3-14 team, the worst team in the league, that has some major question marks. Name me a starting position that's up for grabs.
Tight end, maybe. But
I think tight end, Chig's the move tight end, and Helms the inline tight end.
Right.
Inside linebacker is supposed to be a competition. James Williams and Cedric Gay seem to kind of split it the first day, and James Williams has not moved from there since. I think we have audio of Frank Bush talking about this yesterday, and this is the company line. If you have it ready, this is the company line from Frank Bush.
We're still fighting that battle. It's a good competition in the room. James is doing a great job. Cedric is coming along, and even Curtis Jacobs and Otis, those guys are starting to show up. So that competition's still going on. We're gonna find the best one out of the bunch, but right now they're fighting like hell to see if they could be the guys who run out there with the rest of the guys.
They're fighting like hell, but not at practice with the ones. They're not fighting like hell because practice with the ones, all of the snaps have been James Williams.
It's a good point.
And he said they're fighting in the meeting room. Well, position battles don't unfold in the meeting. Now, look, it's early, and they've got 3 games, and they might start 3 different guys with the ones in 3 games. And somebody else said, I think Denard Wilson said, he wants to see what James Williams can do on the field in a game when Cody Barton's not there, right? And that to me is one of the biggest issues of this position. I've written and said, I don't really care that the second inside linebacker is the weakest spot on the defense, right?
Yeah.
But what happens if Cody Barton gets hurt?
Right. Then your second inside linebacker becomes your first inside linebacker, and that's a pretty big issue. I love that you made that point because it's something I hadn't really thought of, that there's really no competition, especially for starting positions like the offensive line.
Set.
The 5 who are going to be out there. You could argue that wide receiver, like there's some competition, some shuffling, but you could count out the 6 wide receivers who are going to make the team right now.
The
pretty
top
easily.
6, right? Prochet is putting some pressure on as the 7th.
Right.
And after 7, I think there's a gap. Restrepo maybe is 8th. People have finally coming to see the light that he's not working very high. Now, I would say Jefferson is 3 right now, and most people probably think Isle Manor is
right.
3. And there's room for roles to shift there. But we know who the top 3 are right now, and we know who the top 6 are right now. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that sorts out. But is there a ton of tension surrounding the Titans right now? I mean, I'm sure those guys feel it. But is there practice tension in terms of I've got to go out there and make the starting lineup? No. And is there even practice tension for a lot of guys like I've got to make the 53? Isle Manor's not thinking I'm in risk of making the DK's not thinking that. There's a pretty solid, I don't know how many, but if I counted the roster right now, the number would be too high for how many guys know that they're on this team.
Feel comfortable.
And that lack of tension is part of what I think a lot of us are talking about as a factor in this lack of urgency, energy, electricity.
It's a very good point, because not that you need desperation, but urgency, I think, is the right word. Of you could maybe argue that there's probably 5 to 10 guys, maybe 15, who are fighting for those last few spots, which honestly, the last couple spots probably comes down to what positions the Titans want to keep an extra guy at. So it's less about competing in your own room as it is where the Titans are going to prioritize their 53. And some of those guys, we mentioned earlier, Titans have number 1 waiver priority. Like 51 through 53, I don't think they're going to be very comfortable even when they're told they made the initial
maybe
roster.
Even longer, maybe even a few more than that.
Right. So I think that is probably one of the bigger reasons why there hasn't been a ton of juice. I made the surface level observation over the weekend that it was a little less hot over the weekend. So maybe that helped too, that a little less tired out there. But I think if you're looking for,
I think that factors in. I said Saturday was one of the top 3 days I've ever been at a camp in 29 years, weather-wise.
Right. It was low to mid 80s, which is,
and the breeze. And if you're in the shadow of that building, which we are generally, it was lovely.
Right. And you're all in these pads and you're out there working. Like, I'm sure 95-degree heat is going to bring the energy down a little bit. But I think if you're looking for big picture, what could be causing this lack of juice is that there just isn't a whole lot of urgency from this Titans roster, because a lot of guys feel comfortable in what their role is going to be this season. And is that an indictment on the front office for not bringing in enough competition? Is that an indictment on Callahan for not stoking that enough? I don't know. But we'll see if that improves throughout training camp. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We will get to your phones coming up next. We'll also continue to talk about what the joint practices could do for this team, because it's not just about Cam Ward. Maybe that's what brings the juice, is you're not competing against your teammates. You're competing against another team coming up later this week. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky, Connor Newt, next man up here on 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky with you on this Monday. PK, you got something?
Yeah. So Taylor, Dave Head 77 says, if I didn't see who is tagged on this on Twitter, he's saying this, I would think this is the Paul and Simon Kuharsky show. Baby face Jake.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
Yeah, a lot of youth. Simon begins his sophomore year at Ravenwood today, so he's unavailable to host this show. So
that's
you
why
are
I'm here.
Safe in that regard.
Don't have.
Also, I don't think he's got a radio personality and B sports knowledge. So if people are coming for your job, don't worry about Simon.
Don't worry about Simon. I believe we're going to talk a little more about Simon later on.
Yeah, Simon had a torturous Sunday.
We will get to that coming up later in this hour. Yes, I have gotten those comments before. I believe.
Hold on. Let's do an over-under.
Okay.
Now, did you go to Virginia Tech?
I did go to Virginia Tech.
You went to Virginia Tech. How long have you had the Vandy women's play-by-play?
This will be my 4th season.
4 seasons. So I'm going to peg you at 26.
I will be 26 in November.
Look at that.
There
Give me
you
a
go.
bell sound, or
There you go.
I'm happy for the applause track
Yes,
that you play.
I mean, if I round up, I am 26. So there you go.
When's the big birthday?
November 11th.
November
I'm
11th.
11/11. So,
How do you feel about being young?
You know, it flies by. It feels like yesterday I was still in college. So, you know, I feel like I'll be 30 before I know it.
Now, I'm pretty good friends with a couple of Virginia guys, so I think they probably hate you, and you probably hate them.
My whole family went to Virginia Tech, so I was trained from a very young age to not like the University of Virginia.
Do you know John Glennon at all?
I have not met John Glennon, but obviously, you know, follow him on social media.
He's a UVA guy.
I did not know that.
I have streaked the lawn at UVA.
Really?
Yeah.
And
I've never been to Virginia Tech, so.
We don't like that UVA. They're very prim and proper. It's not campus. It's the grounds over there.
I call it campus.
And you're not a freshman. You're a first year.
Yeah. I lived in DC. I was working an early job of my career in DC. I had a friend in grad school at UVA, not that far from DC. Went there several times.
Gotcha.
Had a blast.
I grew up just outside DC. So there we go.
A lot of very handsome women there. Very attractive place to spend time at that age.
In Charlottesville, for sure. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Let's go to our phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Matt from Bellevue has been waiting patiently. Matt, good morning. Go ahead.
Oh, you guys, take your time. I thought we're talking about energy levels, and I don't know about the Titans, but my energy was given a whole new level when I found out of the change over there. I'll tell you what, it is refreshing to listen to radio that's just not cancered out. I know we're not going to mention any names or anything along those lines, but I mean, how can you not pick on the Titans? They're an easy team to pick on, but day in and day out, second guess every move they do, talk down on them, trash the team. Amen. Thank God you guys made a change. I love it. I don't care who you guys got up there. Paul, keep going. It's just whoever you guys put a little positive to it. And I enjoy it. Today you guys are actually positive. Goodbye to the radio cancer that was. Goodbye to the person who likened himself to Tom Brady. Goodbye.
Thank you for the call, Matt.
I'll just say this about the negative positive. I'm not high on this team. I've got a lot of doubts. I don't know that we've been positive. You're saying that we've been positive. I think we've
kind of been trashing Cam Ward.
Hour and 20 minutes. We've had negative things to say about Cam Ward and about the offense and the like. But you know, for my perspective, I'm over there on a daily basis. I have relationships with all of the people I'm talking to you about. And so I'm, you know, I make an effort to have some degree of respect as I talk about them, even if I've got major complaints about things. We're going to talk shortly about the one thing that's really pissed me off that I've heard since camp started that I think's ridiculous. Does it mean that I think Brian Callahan's a idiot and incompetent and all of that? Absolutely not. But do I take issue with something that he's said in the last week? Yeah, very strongly.
I think we both are pretty realistic about the Titans. I would not guess that they're going to win more than 5 or 6 games this year, but, you know, not pessimistic to say. I mean, I guess that would be the right word. Let's go back to our phone lines. Adam in Portland has been waiting. Adam, how's it going? Thanks for calling.
Dude, that last call was ridiculous. You could be proud for Jake and not crap on the dude out the door. He's a great talent. I've hated him for a long time, but he's a great talent on the radio. Whatever, dude.
He's
anyway,
very good at radio. I wish nothing but the best.
For sure.
For sure. Hey, so all right. So here's my problem with what you just said, though, man. I'm picturing like a job where sales are down and you got to make changes and you bring in new talent. And if there was no energy with that group, wouldn't you think you brought the wrong people in? If you're saying I.O. Manor and DK and all these guys aren't worried about their job, that's the most ridiculous. Then you got the wrong people. Like, you got the wrong people in there. We were the worst team in the league. I'm paying thousands of dollars for season tickets. Like, you should have some urgency to get better quick. Like, shouldn't you feel that? Like, Lockett, even Lockett being a older guy, he's like one of the only dudes I'm seeing bring energy. And I know he's a shoo-in to make the team. So I just feel like if these young guys don't have pressure on them to make the team, dude, that's kind of ridiculous.
Well, stick with us. Stick with us. I'm not saying they don't feel pressure, but I'm saying if you're realistic, I mean, do you think I.O. Manor is going home at night thinking, my God, I'm in jeopardy of not making this team? The fact of the matter is they spent 2 fourth-round picks on receivers. They're a receiver-needy team. If you look at the depth chart, which we'll see later this afternoon, but, I mean, if you make one up, it's clear. I mean, if you're a 4th-round draft pick by the Tennessee Titans, you're on the team in your rookie year.
Unless your name's Des Fitzpatrick.
Now, yeah. But they're fighting. I mean, I don't mean to indicate they're not going out and fighting and playing hard. I just mean to tell you the tension of that thing where you're a fringe guy trying to make it, that belongs to James Prochet. Right?
Maybe so, dude. But even like, I.O. Manor, who is he? Like, he's not proved anything to me. And DK, I've heard enough about fast. Like, the Raiders are a prime example of somebody who draft fast dudes that don't know how to play receiver. Just because you're fast doesn't mean anything to me. So, like,
but who do you have beating them out? Sheffield?
Who knows? You got number
Jaquan
one
Jackson?
safety.
Have you seen Jaquan Jackson?
Yeah, I know he sucks. I don't even like saying his name. But at the same time, you got the number one slot when these guys get cut. So these guys should not feel like they've automatically earned a spot, dude.
Thanks for the call, Adam.
I don't know what their mentality is. I'm just telling you realistically that the Tennessee Titans of 2025 are not even in the slightest considering cutting 4th-round wide receivers.
Why would they pick them if they thought they weren't going to make the team right off the gate?
Even if they were disasters, they would get more time than that. And They're not disasters. They're playing well.
And sure, there are probably teams out there with more wide receiver depth where maybe I.O. Manor and Chim DK, maybe they are towards the bubble. I still think if you spend a 4th-round pick on a guy, they're going to make the team. But this is not a team that has enough wide receiver depth to be cutting 4th-round picks. Like you said, even if they were a disaster, you hope on the potential of what you saw when you scouted them that, hey, maybe training camp was bad, but they'll figure it out, rather than going with an undrafted rookie or somebody like Jaquan Jackson, who you've already seen really isn't a quality NFL player.
And maybe Adam's issue is that they don't bring in good enough guys, and it's hard to find them, quite frankly, when you're talking about a TJ Sheffield or a Matt Landers. I think Landers came in as a 1-for-1 for Colton Dow. Well, Matt Landers, I mean, he's a good-looking guy, 6'4", 200 pounds. He's a basketball player.
Right. He's an athlete, maybe not a football player.
Not a football player. And you can only do so much with those free agents that you're getting. Burks disappeared like we expected he would disappear. If he was back and healthy and had transformed himself into something that he hadn't been, could he have made things more interesting? Maybe.
I think Burks was probably the wild card in all of this. You'd like to see him make the team. I said this before. He was Caleb Farley last year. Like, you've kind of given up on him, but you're going to give him a chance to go make some plays and make this roster. Farley didn't do it last year, and Burks obviously gets hurt this year.
And the Titans are on a long run of that guy in that position. You hold out the tiny bit of hope if you're us, maybe a little bit more hope if you're them.
But you're not counting on it.
It doesn't come to fruition.
Yeah, and I don't think they were counting on anything from Treylon Burks this year, but obviously his tenure ended, I think, earlier than they hoped it would with the injury at the stadium practice last week. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We're going to get into what Paul has not liked that he's heard from the Titans. What's really gotten him going so far here in training camp. We'll do that next. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky, next man up, 1025 The Game.
Jumping ahead a little bit, but what will you get out of the joint practices over the next couple of weeks, maybe that will give you a better indicator of what things you need to work on, what things you're doing well, that maybe you just can't get out here going against yourself?
You just get to see another team. And with that comes another set of schemes on offense, defense, and special teams. So you get to see different looks, different style of play. Both those teams have different things that they do from what we do, which is good. And then you get a chance to see guys compete against another team, and you get to measure a little bit of where you stand. Again, I think those teams are talented teams. I mean, they're both teams that I think are going to be in the playoff race. It's going to be good for us to go against them. And from strictly just a competitive standpoint, that's the thing I'm looking most forward to. Just seeing different color jersey and different players going up against our guys. And I think it's exciting, and I'm looking forward to it very much so.
That was Brian Callahan yesterday, looking ahead to joint practices this week against Tampa Bay, next week against the Atlanta Falcons. It is that time of the year. There is a Titans football game this weekend. Crazy to think that the offseason, as long as it is, it can fly by. The Titans will play their first preseason game on Saturday against the Buccaneers. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky, next man up here on 102.5 The Game. PK, you mentioned that there is something that the Titans have been saying that you have a problem with, maybe frustrating to you. I'm very interested to hear what this is.
Yeah, well, I really I think philosophically this pass rush thing is very circular. We touched on it a little bit earlier. So they stay at number one. They draft the quarterback so they don't get the big time pass rusher there, which is a guy a lot of us, dreamed about, but knew was probably not going to happen. Right. Then you trade down in the second round, and you're not getting the best of the possibilities. If you stayed put, you could have got Donovan Ezekariu out of BC. He went to Dallas. He had 16.5 sacks last year. If you brought him in, you would have felt like, hey, you got a collegiate premier pass rusher, right? They take Oladejo at 52. The guys that went after him who fit kind of the more traditional, they're small, not small, but smaller than Femi. Mike Green went to Baltimore. He had off-field issues, right? Princely Umamelian, whose name I butcher, went to Carolina. He lasted until 77th in the third round, right? It might have been too much finesse, not enough power.
Right.
And he lasted a long time. You're not taking him at 52. So, their options were very limited. There was nobody in free agency that was going to be this guy. So they make it a little bit like, hey, we decided to go bigger. But I think it also was decided for them that they were going to go bigger, because Draymond Jones and Ward are who's out there for them.
Yeah.
Right. Draymond Jones, who's maxed out at 6.5 sacks. You don't have anybody that's been a sack artist. Key is your bendy edge, who's a third down guy. We talked about him being streaky and everything. But bear with me as I read this Brian Callahan quote, because I wrote a story about this idea that they went from kind of, I think it's fair to characterize this way. They talked last year about, the guy who gets the one-on-one needs to win and get to the quarterback. And now they're talking about, we want a collective pass rush to close the pocket on a quarterback. Well, you're going from asking one guy to win with the favorable matchup to asking several guys, if not to win outright, to have a successful rush simultaneously. Now, what do you like the odds of better there, Jake?
Winning one-on-one seems to be an easier task than everybody collapsing the pocket together.
All right, so here's Callahan. He's talking first about quarterbacks. They don't really like that from my experience, and quarterbacks don't respond well to a solid push from the interior. Now, this has become popular. Vrabel was big on this too, right? And they're built around Simmons and Sweat. Number one thing they want, interior push from those two guys, which doesn't necessarily mean sacks. It means making a guy uncomfortable and getting him off the spot. Quote continues, you can deal with edge rushers. You can help on the edge. It's hard to help inside. Someone's going to get a one-on-one inside. And so that's kind of the key, is who gets the one-on-ones and how do we win? And then how do we rush it together where everything's a little more coordinated from that perspective? Again, I don't know that it's going to guarantee more sacks or not, but I think we have better feel for what we want to do with the players we have. And this is what I wrote, I take major objection to the idea that you can, quote unquote, deal with edge rushers. Okay. Here's how the Titans dealt with edge rushers last year. Danielle Hunter of the Texans and Will McDonald of the Jets had 3 sacks against them. Darrell Taylor of the Bears, Bud Dupree, Tua Tuipulotu of the Chargers, Andrew Van Ginkel, Patrick Jones of the Vikings, and Will Anderson of the Texans each had 2 sacks against them. That's just, you can deal with edge rushers. The Titans deal with edge rushers so well that for the 15th year in a row, they're addressing tackle, where they spent $22 million a year on Dan Moore, and last year used their first-round pick on J.C. Latham. And it feels to me like you're setting a low bar for your edge rushers. Oh, they're going to be dealt with because somebody's going to chip on them and they're not going to get there. So we're just going to count on winning one-on-one. You know, Myles Garrett tends to be a little bit of a problem. You don't just deal with him. And he said, oh, well, there are some guys at the top. And I said, well, certainly you'd like one. Oh, yeah, we'd like one of those guys. It couldn't get there. Look, I do too much of this. I do too much of this where I parse the words that people say and beat them up. And this was one line, but this is the first time I've done it this year. And I think this line, you can deal with edge rushers, really makes an excuse for the Titans. They don't happen to have any edge rushers. So they say, well, if you had one, the teams could deal with it.
It immediately made me think of Myles Garrett 2 years ago in that Browns game where the Titans just were shifting the tight end back and forth to try and
Schwartz was making fun of him.
It's just like, an elite edge rusher, there's a reason those guys get paid so much. And there's a reason the tackles that have to block them get paid so much, because it's really hard to do. And I understand if you really like a quarterback, you take Cam Ward. I was a big proponent of taking Cam Ward first overall. But you do have to spend some capital, whether that's draft capital or in free agency, although elite pass rushers don't hit free agency very often. And we'll talk about maybe one who's available on the trade market, but you have to spend high draft capital, premier draft capital to go get an elite pass rusher. You had the chance to do that with Abdul Carter this year. You decided to take Cam Ward. It feels like next year, wherever the Titans are drafting,
automatic.
It's got to be a pass rusher. It doesn't even matter. Like, unless Femi Oladejo comes out and is defensive rookie of the year and has 11 sacks as a rookie, you have to go take a pass rusher. Especially if you're picking in the top 12 to 15, you can build around that. If you can have first round pick Jeffrey Simmons, Tavondre Sweat, Femi Oladejo, if he is who you think he is, that is a good start on the defensive line. But you've got to have a premier edge rusher. You have to. The teams that are really good and win Super Bowls, they have an elite guy who can get to the quarterback. Josh Sweat would have been the example last year, and he took over the Super Bowl against the Chiefs.
And it dictates so much for the rest of your defense. If that guy can consistently cause problems, then everybody else's job gets easier, and you take a lot of strain off the secondary. Right now, this looks like a team that's going to need to blitz a lot, which puts a lot of strain on your secondary if that guy doesn't get home or is not influential on the play. And they have capable blitzers. McCreary out of the slot, Winston out of the slot. Brownlee certainly can cause trouble. I think Barton and Williams, are interesting guys in that role. But this team's had its best success historically when it's rushing 4. And you want to talk about what a dynamic pass rusher can do. People may be sick of it, and it's ancient history now. You go to 1998, Titans had a pretty good defense that was missing one thing.
Yep.
You go to 1999, and they found the one thing at number 16 in the draft. You dropped Javon Curson, and you had a Super Bowl defense.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say the Titans have not invested enough capital into that position. I mean, when's the last time they picked a pass rusher in the first round? Derek Morgan?
And was that 2010?
That sounds right.
2010.
And
That's
you take
too long.
You
now
took
they've had
Landry
free agency,
early,
and they had, they brought in some
Arakpo and
but not enough.
Right. That's one of those positions that you shouldn't go 15 years without taking one in the first round.
And look, they talk about affecting the passer, and certainly there are plenty of plays where you can affect the passer and you force an incompletion and all of that. But we know, and I wish I had stats in front of me, like there's some outrageous number of how ineffective drives are when the quarterback is sacked during that drive.
Yeah.
You know, so forcing an incompletion on 2nd and 8 is great. You got 3rd and 8. Sacking a guy on 2nd and 8 and creating 3rd and 14 is a different deal.
Right. And that's why the Titans defense last year, although you look at the yardage numbers and they're fine, they were just ineffective. They couldn't force turnovers. They couldn't get to the quarterback. Like, those are the two things that your defense has to be able to do. You know, forcing incompletions, like you mentioned, stopping the run, all that's really important. But the really good defenses, they get short fields. And you do that by sacking the quarterback and turning the ball over.
All right. The Titans had the other thing, and their defense deserves some grace based on the fact that special teams was putting them in bad field position.
Will Levis.
And the turnovers were not just bad, but they frequently put them in the, turnovers weren't happening down in the red zone. They were happening and positioning people on the porch.
Right. You look at that Lions game where it felt like Jared Goff was starting at the Titans 30 every single time he had the ball. Yeah. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. You can text or call. When we come back, it was an interesting weekend in the Kuharsky household, I believe. And
stressful.
We will talk about that coming up next. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky, Connor Newt, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game, Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky, Connor Newt alongside you on this Monday morning. First day with the new lineups, so don't forget Chase and Big Joe coming up at noon. They'll be with you till 3. And then DVD takes over in the afternoons from 3 to 6. Adam Vingan, Willie Donick, and Derek Mason. So, Paul let me know over the weekend that it was a very stressful weekend in his household. And as someone who grew up playing baseball and I umpired some little league travel baseball stuff, I know that it's a big deal. And clearly some big decisions had to be made for you over the weekend.
So my guy is an all-in baseball player. He is part of the Ravenwood high school baseball program, which is a super competitive environment. It's going to be harder and harder for him as he goes and tries to get a foot in the door in the varsity program, which will at least thin out a little bit after this giant senior class graduates. Godspeed to them all. But he had a secure spot the last 2 years at his travel team. And they had 2 15U teams combining into one 16U team. So that was going to be a competitive environment, and all indications were good there. And we kind of got sideswiped when he did not get an invitation. And look, so I'm a bitter dad, defending his kid, and I can understand there was a path where for them it was not the best. He was not the best option for them amongst their middle infielders. I can't really buy it. I think they were a little disingenuous on sticking to core principles that I had come to buy in with them. I'm disappointed in them for that. But that sets off a scramble, right? They had early tryouts, fortunately. Started, there's a Facebook page where everybody posts their tryouts. I start hashing through that. He's telling me, yes, I'm interested in these guys. I'm not interested in those guys. So-and-so plays for them. His coach from the old program is not still going to be at least a full-time coach with the old program, was a big fan of his, disappointed that he didn't stick, offers to go to bat for him in any way, shape, or form possible. So gets a call like the day after he's cut, just coincidental from a team where one of his buddies from Ravenwood plays. We just had our tryouts, but we're really interested in him. Talked to some people about him, trying to find a field for like a secondary tryout to have a couple other kids out. You interested? Yeah, we're interested. I'll keep you posted, sign up for a couple other things, goes to one, the next night, things go well. Coach remembers him from playing against them. Simon doesn't like to stick around after stuff like that, or for me to have conversations with people. It's like, Dad, let's just go and we'll hear from them or we won't hear from them. And I'm like, listen, let's just stick around a little bit. So a couple people put in a good word for you with this guy that he knows and everything, so you end up sticking around after this one, get an offer, verbal offer right there. Look, your leg up, you got an offer already, go for a hitting lesson the next day, a new guy to just see, gets a lot out of that, gains several miles an hour just on some swing changes. That's a big deal, right?
Right.
Plus
exit velocity.
Plus confidence is up. Now I'm swinging the bat better to go to these next couple tryouts. Go to a tryout of a new guy who's very intriguing, starting something new. Do the same thing. This was just like an individual thing, but there were 4 kids there, but 3 of them were a year younger. I thought he did well. Do the same thing. Like he took a couple questions from a couple parents, and I'm like, let's hang out for a second, whatever. And he's like, no, let's go. Stick around, ask a couple more questions, get an offer there on the spot. Meanwhile, the other guy who had called us, I call him like, hey, we got a couple of offers. I don't want to pressure you or anything, but the clock's going to start ticking, and I don't want to lose a chance for us to get seen by you, and everything. And he's like, calls me back like a half hour later. He's like, listen, I've talked to these people. I went on Game Changer and I looked at some clips, sight unseen. I'm willing to offer him a thing. So got 3 offers out of 2 tryouts, pretty good rate. So he goes back to the new guys thing to see the bigger tryouts and likes that. So it comes down to two teams. One, a big established organization. They've got 4 16U teams.
Yep.
Right. He doesn't know guys that are on his team necessarily, but he knows several guys that play for other divisions of this team. Looks really good. Guys have been incredibly gracious to us. Nice. Can't go wrong there, right? Looking at the practice times, where it is, how it fits the schedule, all of that stuff. The other one is this guy, very impressive guy, who won a ring as a scout for the Rangers, played in the Twins system. Really about player development. Sent me like a whole scouting sheet that broke him down.
Wow.
Section by section. Here's what it does well. Here's what I would work with him on. Here's whatever. His whole thing is like player development, major player development. All right. So it's clear, like the one team, we're going to showcase you and get you out on the field. The other one, hey, we're not going to play as many tournaments, but there's going to be a lot of personal development. I'm a scholarship guy. I know how this whole system works, right? Torture. I do not remember. It reminded me of when we had to put our dog down, and it said to Simon, who just couldn't get to the point where he left the room, like, we could stay as long as you want, but it's not going to get any easier.
Right.
It reminded me of when I was making my college decision.
Yeah.
Right. And my dad on that night, my mom and I and my dad were sitting around, and my dad got up at one point and went to bed. He said, you got everything in front of you. I know you'll make a good choice. Oh my God. He was just tortured. Called his old coach, had him on a conference call. He offered his opinion. His mother and I offered our opinions. I felt like I was kind of nudging. And he finally decided. So this OFP, a new organization out of Spring Hill, which is a little further from Brentwood than I like. This guy who's a former Texas Ranger scout and has a World Series ring.
Wow.
We're partnered up with him and forging ahead and looking forward to great things. I said to the guy, it feels a little risky. You're new.
Right.
That's what I think is making him hesitate.
Maybe
versus this established
higher ceiling, lower floor, I guess would be the way to put it. Of like the player development side is great, but also not as established, not as safe as maybe the other.
And he's inheriting some players from another program that he's kind of taken over.
Right.
But he said, look, I'm taking some risk for you too. He tried out. I saw him field. I saw him hit, but I haven't seen him play a game.
Yeah.
I like him. I think I can maximize him. But we're both taking a risk.
Yeah. I mean,
so it was good.
For people who don't understand the world of travel baseball, like
or travel sports.
It's travel sport. Yeah. Soccer, anything like that. It's stressful. I mean, have you ever seen, I think it's John Chris does the sketch on travel baseball. And it's like, all right, welcome to the team. Our first tournament's in Clearwater, Florida.
Right. If we win that,
it'll be $15,000. If we win that, we go to Puerto Rico 3 days later. That'll be $20,000. Then we go to the Mumbai World Championships. That'll be $100,000. It's like, what do we do about our jobs? It's like, you quit them.
Yeah.
I own you now.
Yeah. Well, these tournaments, like this year, all of a sudden we were playing games on Mondays and Tuesdays.
Right.
I mean, like my wife's not working currently, and that's a great time for me.
Right.
But like these other families were like, what the hell do you guys do?
Right. I mean, I guess,
hey, we can give you a ride if you need.
For you, it's great where weekends are much busier for you, especially during football season. You're traveling.
Plus out of season though, outside of the combine and maybe a rookie camp and stuff. I'm pretty wide open. So baseball season's great for me.
People with regular 9 to 5s, it's like Monday and Tuesday. Like, how are we going to get out there? And I mean,
if he was a football player, I'd be screwed. I'd never see him play.
615-737-1025. Great stuff from Paul. Glad that the decision-making is over at the very least.
Yeah.
And
now give him a t-shirt and let's get the ball in the gap.
T-shirt and a cap and get rolling. 615-737-1025. You can text or call. Final hour coming up next. There are some players who might be out there on the trade block in the NFL. Do either of them make sense for the Titans? We will talk about it coming up next. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky, next man up here on 102.5 The Game. Final hour on this Monday. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman with Paul Kuharsky today alongside Connor Newt. Thanks for joining us. First show here from this 9 to noon spot. Again, it's going to be me every day, and we're going to have different voices all the time. We hope PK will be on regularly. TD on Tuesday. So starting tomorrow, we will have Teron Davenport every Tuesday as long as his schedule allows. So that'll be fun to get TD on for a full 3 hours and many more. Again, Chase and Big Joe coming up at noon. DVD takes over at 3. PK, some news around the NFL this weekend and 2 trade requests. One of them, I think, a little bit more notable than the other. But Terry McLaurin of the Commanders, he's been looking for a new deal. He did report to camp to avoid some of the fines, but he formally issued a trade request. And then Micah Parsons with a long notes app message on Twitter over the weekend, talking about how Stephen Jones refuses to interact with his agent, won't negotiate, and he has formally requested a trade. Do either of these make sense? And let's start with Micah Parsons. He's the bigger name. He's the younger player, the more productive player. Would it make sense for the Titans to at least poke around if Micah Parsons actually is available to be traded for?
Well, Micah Parsons on the Titans certainly makes sense. Micah Parsons on any team makes sense.
Right.
The guy is a phenomenal football player. I think somebody in the Titans press room was saying he has as many sacks now as Javon Curse had in his Titans career.
Wow.
Okay. And what it would take to get Micah Parsons is, it'd be incredibly expensive. 2 firsts, a first and a second, starting somewhere.
Maybe a player in there too.
And the Titans are behind closed doors, or I'm sure they would say, what we want to do is draft our Micah Parsons next year. They could afford him financially. They could afford him pick-wise. And, I understand the rationale. You say, go get him. He'd transform your defense. He'd make you ahead of schedule. He'd bring you a cachet that you don't have. He would change the face of the franchise and all that. It's all true. And then you'd say, well, screw the way you want to build the team. When an outlier like this becomes available, you pounce on it. But this isn't just the Titans who would be involved in this.
Yeah.
There are a lot of other teams. He surely would have a say. So, yeah, he followed the Titans on Instagram or whatever. He probably followed 10 teams or whatever. And if he's picking a team, he surely isn't picking this one. The one thing a guy's going to want is to be competitive right away. The other thing he's going to want is coaching staff stability, and he doesn't get either of those here. And also, Jerry Jones seems to be laughing this off, which I don't think is helping his situation at all, but saying, don't be concerned about that, and basically calling it negotiating theatrics. So should they go get him? Yeah, of course they should go get him. Is it realistic to go get him? No.
The one thing I've seen Titans fans getting excited about, and I forgot to send Connor this clip, but Micah Parsons, I guess during the draft, made a big deal about how much he likes Cam Ward, which that was 3 months ago. I don't think it really means anything, but you're right. Everybody should be interested in Micah Parsons, and he does fit the timeline for the Titans of you're going to get 5 probably prime years of Micah Parsons left. He's 26. So pass rushers are usually good into their early 30s. I think you're getting a minimum of 5 prime years from Micah Parsons. And I think the general consensus is the Titans want to be good when the new stadium opens up. Like 2027, that's kind of the target date. And trading the first round picks, it would seem like a hefty price, but if you think you have the quarterback, it makes it a little less hard to swallow, where the big thing that you would trade a lot of first round picks for is to go get a quarterback. If you feel like you already have them, getting Micah Parsons for 2 first round picks feels like it would be worth it. But I think the other side of this is Micah Parsons probably doesn't want to play here.
Yeah, and you tend to overvalue the picks in these situations. But say you're giving away two first-round picks for him. So you solve the edge issue. But we've talked about other spots, right? They don't have, besides Jarvis Brownlee, Darrell Baker would be a restricted free agent. They don't have another cornerback under contract.
Right. And
beyond this year.
Wide receiver, wide receiver would be.
Who's a young, potentially premier wide receiver. They don't have one on the roster. The top three right now are, Ridley, who's aging, Lockett, who's aged already, Jefferson, who you don't know what you're getting, and who also is not young.
250 yards last year.
Right. So I mean, but then you're counting on Io Manor or DK or Oliver to emerge. Now, what's the ceiling for those three guys? Probably a 2.
Yes.
But none of them are going to emerge to be a legitimate number 1, and they need a legitimate number 1. So you're not getting that in the next 2 years if you deal for Micah Parsons. So you deal for Micah Parsons, and you're weak at receiver and cornerback for at least the next 2 years. Now, does that make you feel a little less good about getting Micah Parsons?
That's the question. Is you aren't a Micah Parsons away from being a Super Bowl contender. I think that's where a lot of the contender, like I heard Joe Rexrode mention the Bills this morning. Like, that's a team that you go out and get Micah Parsons, you feel like that may put you over the top. The Titans, yes, it fits the timeline where he would still be good when they're hoping to be good, but you still need so many other pieces. And to get a running mate for Cam Ward at wide receiver, you mentioned cornerback, because L'Jarius Sneed, even if he is a factor this year, he's not part of the long-term plan, I don't think, for this team.
I mean, he's under contract for 3 more years, including this year.
Right.
If he, remarkably was great on Sundays, still with the knee managed week to week, that would be phenomenal. And that could, lower the need level for that. But still, there are other things they need to be a complete team.
Micah Parsons,
he would help you cover up a lot of those things.
Yep.
You don't need as good a cornerback back there if you're rushing the passer that well. You don't need to score as many points if you're rushing the passer that well. I get it. But I don't think you could say, give up whatever it takes to get Micah Parsons. And with McLaurin, I mean, I think you can argue against the strategy, but they've upped the talent at receiver. And I think if you bring in somebody now that goes in front of these guys, as good as he is, and he's a little bit older. How old is he?
He will be 30, I think, in the fall.
He'll be 30 on September 15th.
Right.
So, in the first 2 weeks of the season, he's 30. I'm anti-adding 30-year-old plus players to the Titans, period. I think he's a terrific player. But also, I think, outside of Van Jefferson, who is a question mark, but has looked pretty good, I think they've brought in guys that they want to give every chance to play and turn into something. And so if that's your plan, I think fans are too quick to say, well, McLaurin clearly slots at 1 or 2, and you just bump everybody down. Well, now you're taking away development opportunities for all of these guys when your plan was, we're going to give every chance to DK and to Io Manor and to Bryce Oliver to mature. And so then you don't see as much of what those guys have, and you've changed plan. And I just think they've made their plan, and they're going to stick to their plan. They're not going to go out and get somebody. If receiver had been a disaster to this point, then maybe it's in the back of your head. But receiver has not been a disaster at this point. In fact, Bryce Oliver has looked really, really good.
Yep. And the front office, the way they've talked about this roster, it doesn't seem like they're in the business of making big name ads at this point in the offseason, into training camp. Terry McLaurin, they're not the same type of player, but it's like you already have Calvin Ridley, who's a 30-ish year old wide receiver, very talented, getting paid $20+ million. I don't know if you need both of those guys. It might help Cam Ward in the now, in his rookie season, which is, it's important to give him as many weapons as a rookie as possible. But down the road, does that help Cam Ward to have two aging wide receivers who, by the time Cam Ward is hitting his prime, probably aren't going to be much of a factor anymore? And whatever picks you give up for Terry McLaurin could be what helps Cam Ward 5-10 years down the road. If you do go get him a true number one wide receiver, or you get him a tight end that we've been begging the Titans to go get a top level tight end. I think Terry McLaurin just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the Titans, especially with where this roster is right now.
So I'll say this too about Terry McLaurin, and I love him. I think he's a phenomenal player.
Me too.
But since 17 game seasons, so since 21, he's had 1053, 1191, 1002, 1096. Those are not the kind of giant numbers you would go out and trade for, right? Yeah. You're looking for 14, 15, 16.
Yeah.
And 16 is kind of crazy. But you get what I'm saying. Like, you average those out per game, you're talking,
70 yards
50,
a game.
60 yards, 65 yards a game the last 2 seasons. That's not nothing, but I don't know if that's franchise changing. And he's not super dynamic, 12.7 yards, 13.4 yards per reception the last 2 years. As a guy who's followed the Titans forever and is always looking for that speed, take the top off dynamic, if I'm giving up something significant in a trade, I've got to get that back, and he's not that.
Right.
Also, I'll say this, and I can't remember who said this when we were in D.C. last year. It might have been Nick Suss for the Tennessean. Terry McLaurin is as loved by his fan base as virtually anybody we've seen. You're nodding. You're from up there.
Yep. I have plenty of friends who
Those
are
Commanders fans love that guy. If they were to move him, that would really be a mistake, I think.
Right. Especially when you just went to the NFC Championship game last year. You don't want to get rid of good players at this point. You want to give Jaden Daniels as many weapons as possible. You brought in Deebo Samuel, who had a rough year last year, but
has he lost any weight because his summer stuff? Remember those?
Yes. I don't know, but I did see Mike Garafolo, I guess, outed that he had a finger injury yesterday. Yeah. I tried to shake your hand, but you told me not to. But no, Terry McLaurin, I don't think either of these guys are going anywhere. Usually this is how it works out. You request a trade, and a week later, the contract is signed and everything's worked out. We'll see. Maybe
Jerry Jones sure seems to be
overcomplicating. He is the wild card because
and I like that Parsons called him out for this thing where, like, you and I talk contract for a little bit and you make that like that was a big negotiating session, and my agent hasn't talked to you at all, and I ain't working that way. And a bunch of players echo it. Like, yeah, you did that to me too.
Of the two players, I would think Parsons is more likely to get traded just because the Cowboys just don't seem to know how to run their organization right now. But I still think I would put the odds of either of them getting traded in like the 10 to 15% at best. 615.
As I watch my Yankees be a complete mess, I take solace in the fact that Dallas has been a complete mess for,
25
Yankees
years.
are a mess, but they went to a World Series last year. Dallas hadn't done a damn thing in forever.
Yeah, more than 25 years since they've been to the NFC Championship game. So it's been a mess down there for America's team. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We will get to your phones coming up next. We talked in that segment about the young wide receivers, and I think that is a huge part of this team this year. Obviously, Cam Ward is the number one guy, offensive lines up there. But seeing what these young wide receivers can do is going to be a huge focal point this season for what the Titans' future looks like on offense. We'll get to that next. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Almost 4,000 on the Twitter now and 50 people on the YouTube stream right now. It's better than what we usually see.
It's good.
Tuesday, September 9th at Geonis Park in Nashville, Tennessee. For more information, visit somoslocales.com. Hey guys, it's Big Joe. Let's be real. Something's wrong with your heart. Go to the doctor. You break a bone. You get it treated. So why do so many of us ignore it when something's not right up in our head? Your mental health is every bit as important as your physical health. Depression, stress, anxiety. These aren't signs of weakness. They're real issues that deserve real care. And worrying about what other people might think, who cares? The strongest thing you can do is take action.
When someone finally reaches out and talks to a professional, you can almost see the weight lift off their shoulders. Just starting the conversation can change everything.
Unity Psychiatric Care is here to help with trusted mental health providers in Columbia and Clarksville, in person or through telehealth. Make the call. Please don't wait. Go to our website and click the Unity Psychiatric Care link. That's unitypsych.com/Big Joe. Schedule an appointment or call 888-508-8002. 888-508-8002. Because taking care of your mental health is taking care of yourself.
Throughout the country, buried pipelines are indicated by a pipeline right-of-way. A long, wide stretch of grass cleared of trees and marked with signs. If you have a right-of-way near your home, do not plant anything in it or dig in it. Do not install a fence or build your kids a super cool fort without first getting the pipeline operator's approval. For more on pipeline safety, visit pipesafety.org. A message from the Tennessee Gas Association, Tennessee Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
Best Friends Animal Society is working to ensure that every dog and cat in the country has a safe place to call home. Just like Superman, if you use your power for good, join us. Visit bestfriends.org to adopt an out-of-this-world pet near you. Together, we will save them all.
Next Man Up with Jake Lyman, your sports leader.
I think the rookies are coming along really, really well. I think, again, like I said before, they're all smart guys. They're all making plays in the run game and the passing game. You know, Alec, he wants to be in there on run plays. He wants to be the muscle for this group, so he begs me to get in there on all the run plays. But his route running has improved. Chim's route running has improved. Chim's miss ability after the catch is shown a couple times in camp. And Restrepo continues to get better in that slot position, getting open, trying to figure out man or zone, just finding soft spots, catching the ball, getting up the field. So they're all working well.
How about that was wide receivers coach Tyke Tolbert earlier this week, yesterday actually, talking about the young wide receivers on the team and how they've looked so far in training camp. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky, Connor Newton, next man up, 102.5 The Game. We are broadcasting live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heat, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. PK, you've been out there at practice, and I always wonder during this time of year when you hear all these great things about young players, especially wide receiver, one of the more flashy positions. Is it real? Like, is Alec Iamaner actually looking like he could be the starting X on day one? Is Bryce Oliver looking like he can be a real factor? Or is this just kind of training camp darlings kind of thing where, you know, they look really good, but then they end up being your fifth or sixth wide receiver and catch 25 balls the whole year?
I think Iamaner looks really good. And I think DK looks really good, particularly with the ball in his hands. I don't know as much about DK running maybe the full route tree. That's where I would think he needs to grow the most. But I really like Iamaner. The guy that's not getting enough talk, and I want to hear Tyke Tolbert on this, is Bryce Oliver. Bryce Oliver, made the team last year as an undrafted rookie free agent. And a name we haven't heard around here, because the Titans didn't lose a whole lot from last year, is Nick Westbrook-Akine, who really was a self-made man. And his process took time, but he became an awfully dependable guy. Now, last year, ridiculous touchdown rate, right? He had eight or nine in 12 29 catches, some
let me
low
see.
number of catches. Bryce Oliver is in position, I think, and they envision him as a faster Nick Westbrook-Akine who can do a lot and contribute in big ways. I don't think it's inconceivable that, I mean, we've been listing Oliver as receiver 6. I think he could be receiver 4.
Wow.
I don't think it's inconceivable. Here's what Tyke Tolbert, the wide receiver coach, had to say about Bryce Oliver.
Well, he's playing, pretty much 3 positions right now. He's made some plays. His reps has not been as much, say, as Rid or Van or whatever, but when he gets in there, make plays, takes advantage of his reps, making some plays down the field, making some plays on the sideline. So I'm really pleased where he is right now.
I think he's opportunistic, and he's a big-time special teamer. There's no doubt about that. Now, Fassel is one of those guys you're talking about pumping people up.
Yeah.
So when Fassel, I'm not a Restrepo guy, all right. And during minicamp and prior to that in OTAs, I wasn't as impressed by Restrepo as people, and I was counting out these guys the way they kind of count out now. And I asked Fassel about Restrepo on special teams, expecting kind of him to be, and he gave kind of a glowing thing. Then I talked to somebody else in the organization. They said, Bones Fassel will say something positive about absolutely everybody. So it's important to kind of learn the context, right? You have some coaches who are going to bemoan everybody, not as many now publicly, but like if you talk to them on the side, they might be like, nah,
right.
And then you have other guys who are like up on everybody. So Bones is an up on everybody guy. So I was told, don't put too much into what he might say special teams wise about a guy like Restrepo. So yeah, Restrepo's not on coverage teams or return teams. You need guys who are going to be fast. Now I trust Restrepo would be in the right place and do all of that. But if you're looking for receivers to be on special teams, I'm looking at Oliver and Isle Manor,
right?
Bigger, more physical guys who also run better.
Yeah, Restrepo, he would have had to come in and have a pretty massive camp to get himself in the conversation. I mean, in off-season work, it looked like he was maybe getting primed for that. He had a couple of good days in the OTAs, but like you're mentioning, like he's catching way more passes from Tim Boyle than he is from even Brandon Allen. So Restrepo, I think, is you'd say like wide receiver 8, wide receiver 9 at this point.
I put him at 8 right now.
And I guess
and the guy who's in front of him, and most think they keep 6. If you keep 7, that 7th guy's got to be a huge special teams guy. And the huge special teams guy would be Prochet being the punt returner. And we really have no feel for the punt returner yet. That's going to be a big telling thing in Tampa Bay and Atlanta in the game situations.
We're going to
Let's see who they roll out there first.
Right.
I suspect it might be Prochet. I don't know what DK really feels like. He feels like more of a kick returner than a punt returner.
Right.
But let's see what they do there.
We're going to talk about James Prochet on the other side. Titans, right now, we've talked about it earlier when we were talking about the competition on the roster. It feels like 1 through 6 at wide receiver is pretty locked in. Do they keep 7? James Prochet had a pretty solid practice on Saturday. We will talk about him coming up next. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky on this Monday morning. Next Man Up, 102.5 The Game.
really productive out here. Is he? What have you seen from him? Has that been a pleasant surprise in your mind?
I'm familiar with Prochet with his previous years. He's been on rosters and contributed to teams over his career so far. He's really had a nice camp. He's shown up. He's made plays. He's consistently made plays, which I think is the more important part. And he's making a case for himself. And he's got some special teams ability, but he's really shown up offensively. I mean, he's made catches every day. He's gotten himself open. The ball's found him, and it's been really good to see.
That was head coach Brian Callahan yesterday talking about James Prochet, who his spot on the team likely largely depends on whether he is your full-time punt returner. And I think that's something, like you said, Paul, right before we went to break, this week is going to be important for that because we don't really have too much of a grasp on that punt return, kick return situation. They're going to kind of have to show their cards in the joint practices where Brian Callahan said they're going to get more 11-on-11 special teams work. And then, of course, in the preseason game against Tampa Bay this weekend.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising the 11-on-11 special teams work. There hadn't been much, So I usually don't watch special teams super closely. It's a time to get some Twitter stuff together about the bigger periods, but it's been noticeable that they haven't gotten to a lot of that very often. I'm sure Fassel has a plan for how that advances and gets ready, but very curious to see the returns. I'm looking at Prochet here, lifetime punt return average 8.7, but last 2 years 9 and 9.1 for Cleveland. That's pretty good. And if he secures the ball, that's been an issue for this team. They have not done well in the return game. And the thing is, I don't know about the quality of the competition. Spears, DK,
Restrepo's been back there, which
I don't think
you can't put
any kind of
4.8 guy as your returner. We've talked about this before of just how the lack of explosiveness on the return game for the Titans. You've covered the team since the beginning. Do you know how many return touchdowns the Titans have had since I believe it's 2012?
Maybe it's a tiny number. It might be
since 2012. There have been two return touchdowns in the last 13 seasons. One in 2018, which was it was a legit kickoff return from Darius Jennings, and then the A.J. Brown onside kick that he took back against the Colts in 2020.
Which is a great play, but not a catch a punt and return it.
Right. Darius Raynaud had 3 total return touchdowns in 2012. He had 2 punt return touchdowns, 1 kickoff return touchdown. So 3 total in 2012. There have been 2 in the last 13 seasons or 12 seasons of Titans football.
And when you say Darius Raynaud, the first thing people think of is him taking a touchback into the end zone on the first play of a game in Pittsburgh.
That was the first play of the season, right?
Yeah. Thursday night.
Eesh.
Just incredible. Yeah. I mean, there's so much room for special teams growth and improvement that's kind of unseen or unperceived. I think, most people unfamiliar with the specifics of the Titans who watched a just total crappy football team last year had no real idea how much special teams factored into the Titans being terrible last year. Now, Prochet, we've got more on Prochet here from Tyke Tolbert, who's talking about him as a receiver before he chips in with a mention of his special teams skills. So Prochet has been doing things on offense that, like you say, well, if he makes it, he makes it as a returner. But now he's done enough on offense that you think, well, he wouldn't just be a returner. I mean, he could be a guy that could help you on the field. He could be a guy that got wide receiver 6 deactivated.
That's a fair point.
Well, he's playing, pretty much 3 positions right now. He's made some plays. His reps has not been as much, say, as Red or Van or whatever, but when he gets in there to make plays, takes advantage of his reps, making some plays down the field, making some plays on the sideline. So I'm really pleased where he is right now.
He's a slotty guy, but he's playing all three positions there.
Right.
And it's talking about him making, catches on the sideline as well. You'd like the last wide receiver on your game day roster to be versatile in that he could go in for anybody if he's hurt, anybody that's hurt, and be your punt return guy. Makes him more and more intriguing. Who does that squeeze off the game day 46 or 48? It could be a week-to-week basis.
Yeah,
thing.
Based on the matchup, what you need, what you might not need. But you're right. If you keep 7, he's probably I don't know if he can make the team if he isn't your punt returner, though, because
I can't.
You can't keep 7 and I mean, I guess if DK's your punt returner, maybe, but it just becomes hard with the roster crunch to keep 7 if he's not your punt returner.
But here's the thing. If he's on the roster, he's on the game day roster.
Right. And that makes him available on offense too. And with the way he's been performing in camp, maybe he does start to squeeze somebody else out as he works his way up, because you're right. If he's on the roster and he's your punt returner, he's going to be active. Maybe that means some weeks Chim DK is a scratch, or, I mean, Bryce Oliver's been playing well, but maybe he ends up being a scratch one week.
Or eventually, if get to a place where Jefferson is.
Right. If the young
Jefferson
guys show
isn't doing
out.
anything. Now, we saw last year, they foolishly played Traylon Burks for a month of doing nothing before they went to NWI, who was their most productive guy outside of Ridley.
Yep.
So, is Van Jefferson a guy like that? I don't know. Van Jefferson looks good. Now, again, that's practice context.
And you asked earlier the ratio of touchdowns to catches for NWI, 9 touchdowns on 32 catches last year. So
I thought it was 29. So
about
3 off.
30% of his catches.
It's just outrageous.
Went for
he
touchdowns.
won't be duplicating that in Miami, but I think he's in a great situation in Miami.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're the third or
with
competing for the third with Hill and Waddle, you're in a nice position, and you're a sure-handed guy for Tua, who needs to get rid of the ball and not take hits and put himself in concussion situations. I think that's, a nice situation.
It's a good fit for Miami too. I mean, Mike McDaniel comes from that 49ers, the Vols fans, Juwan Jennings, that's kind of the type of player Nick Westbrook-Akine is. And I think he'll fit well down there. Let's go to our phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Steve wants to chime in. Steve, thanks for waiting. What you got for us?
Steven!
Steve, you there? All right.
Good call, Steve.
A little musical interlude there from Steve on the phone line. If you want to call back, Steve, 615-737-1025. Wide receiver, it's always one of the more intriguing groups in training camp, just because it is flashy. And especially when you have a young quarterback like Cam Ward, you want to see those guys show out. Ridley, obviously, I think you know what he's going to be. Lockett, kind of know what he's going to be, maybe a step back from what he was last year too. But I'm really excited this week in the preseason game. I think my eyes, even when Ward goes out of the game, are going to be Iamaner, DK, Oliver. Those are the 3 guys. I think you need one of them to step up and give you wide receiver 2 level production by the end of the season. Because if they don't really, who's going to? Jefferson and Lockett, I think, are going to be contributors, but I don't think you're going to get 500 to 600 yards out of either of them.
Yeah, and you need to look at this team in a long-term view based on this year, right? And Lockett and Jefferson are not long-term guys here.
Right.
So that next 3-pack you're talking about, Oliver, Iamaner, and DK, you want futures out of those guys.
Yeah.
So at the end of the season, you need to be feeling good about the directions of them. What are the odds that all 3 of them have good seasons where the arrow is up? I mean,
they're just
odds tell you that that it's unlikely you're going to have 3 guys with arrows up at the end of the season. One of them gets dinged. One of them underachieved. Who knows how it scrambles out? But that's going to be one of the fun storylines of the season. How are those guys moving,
right,
and looking. Can they put pressure on? I was talking about no competition. Well, no competition for starting roles, but maybe as the season goes on, one of those guys is pushing Lockett. Particularly, I think Io Manor can push Jefferson out, depending on what Jefferson's doing. That's something, I think people would be rooting for sooner than later, unless they find, some magic for Jefferson that he hasn't shown since very early in his career, his first or second year with the Rams. But they have him for a reason.
You need veterans in that room. Like, you can't go in there with Ridley and 5 young guys. So it made sense to bring in guys like Lockett and Jefferson, who've done it before. I mean, Jefferson, was Lockett on the Super Bowl team? No, he wasn't there yet, was he?
I don't know. He was there for 10 years.
He was there I think he might've been there for the Malcolm Butler game, but maybe he was a rookie that year. I don't know. It's right around there, but he's been a veteran for 10 years, and Van Jefferson's won a Super Bowl. It's like, you had to bring in some veteran voices in there, but you're right. I think the Titans would really hope that neither of them are on the team next year, because some of these young guys were able to supersede them by the end of the year.
Plus a draft pick.
Right.
Here's my thing about Ridley, who I like a great deal, and I think will be a better player this year. And the early chemistry with Cam has been remarkable when you consider how much he and Levis struggled to get things together last year, which was a big camp story, which they told us not to worry about, which was BS because it was a early season problem as well. I mean, the completion percentage between the two of them in the first 5-6 weeks was horrific. But there's a little bit to Ridley's problem that is not a quarterback Ridley problem. It's a Ridley problem, where there was one play late in the season that was terrible, where he's crossing to go out of bounds right on a 3rd down, and it was 3rd and 4, and he went out of bounds at 2 yards where he could have cut up, and he said he felt like somebody was there. Well, and there was nobody there. And he has some moments like that with his field placement, with his field geography, that wasn't terrific last year. And so outside of him being better with the quarterback, which is a 2-man process, he needs to get better with his mental in terms of things like that. And they can't give away a key first down because he thought there was a cornerback there that was going to hit him when he could have turned upfield and hit the flag.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We see some callers waiting. We will get to them on the other side as we wrap up. Last call for phone, 615-737-1025. Also, we've got Good Morning Football on in studio here, and they had a segment that I think is worth bringing up before we get out of here. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky, next man up, 1025 The Game.
Off the victory poster.
Oh, wow. No more Rex Rage.
I hope you heard that, by the way. PK getting mad at me because he mislabeled his clip. I gave it back. I was like, PK, you
Having already been through this #1 pick process with Joe Burrow, you're clearly experienced, but do you look at any other experiences or consult with anyone else who went through a similar process with a quarterback?
I think you pay attention to it. You know, I haven't sought any outside counsel with people that have been with those guys. But I've watched it, and I've watched the tape too, and just to watch other rookie quarterbacks in the last couple of years play, see what they did well, where they struggled, see if you can't anticipate maybe a problem or two that we could run into just based on what those games look like. So plenty of research done, plenty of things to look at. And on the flip side, look at where some guys have had success. You know, there's been some rookie quarterbacks that have played well over the last couple of years, and what did they do? What positions did they get put in that allowed them to play well? So all of those things factor in. There's really no stone unturned when it comes to getting a rookie quarterback ready, and there's nowhere I won't look for potential edges or advice or anything like that. So it's been a fun process for sure.
That was Brian Callahan yesterday, not directly comparing Burrow and Ward, but, you know, his experience with Joe Burrow leading to what he can do with Cam Ward, the #1 overall pick this year. Final segment here on Next Man Up. Jake Lyman, Paul Kuharsky, and PK, you just put out on Twitter a picture from Good Morning Football today. Kyle Brandt having the conversation of, is it too early to compare Joe Burrow to Cam Ward? And the answer is a resounding yes. Yes, it is too early to compare Cam Ward to two-time Pro Bowler Joe Burrow, who has played in a Super Bowl.
Well, I put up their NFL statistics side by side. And, Pro Football Reference wouldn't really let me do it in the way I wanted to, but it did give me this. Overall stats. Games, 69 for Joe Burrow, and AV, which is their value statistic, 63 for Joe Burrow. And on the and Pro Bowl 2. I had to write in Cam's name in my own shaky handwriting because it wouldn't give me a Cam picture or a Cam name. On the right side, where games is blank, AV is blank, and awards and honors under championships and Pro Bowls are also blank because as we imagine, it was much more reasonable than the headline,
right?
Which is often the case, both on TV and on the interweb. But it's just a stupid headline. Of course, it's too early to compare Cam Ward to Joe Burrow, who's played 69 games, gone to 2 Pro Bowls, been in a Super Bowl,
been one drive away from winning a Super Bowl, in what was a really tight game with the Rams, all the way down to the wire. Like it's too early to compare Cam Ward to anybody at this point because, again, he has not played a game. But to compare him to a guy who is widely regarded as a top 5 quarterback in the league, it is definitely too early.
Compare him to Jackson Dart. Compare him to Shedeur Sanders. Compare him to Dylan Gabriel, all the other quarterbacks who are in camp right now.
You could even compare him to like J.J. McCarthy, who hasn't played a game yet. Yes, he has the advantage of having been in an NFL building for the last year, but like that's at least a somewhat fair comparison. Let's not compare him to Joe Burrow. Before we get out of here, let's go back one more time to our phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Bob is on the line waiting patiently. Bob, good morning. What you got for us?
Hey, good morning. Hey, Paul, curious question. With Cam being a rookie and the defenses we're starting the season with, which is more important, a number 6 or number 5 receiver or 2 solid good tight ends?
Well, it depends on your preference. I don't think your 5th or 6th receiver outweighs your number 2 tight end unless you're really rolling through the receivers. So provided your top 3 or 4 receivers are fine, then I think it's about your top 2 tight ends. I don't think they're particularly high on Chig Okonkwo, but I think he's their move tight end who will give you some moments. And I think Gunnar Helm now is a better inline tight end who is more dynamic. And I think Josh Wiley has a down arrow on him right now.
Yeah, I asked TD about this. Do you think he could even be battling with like David Martin Robinson for that tight end 3 spot. I don't know if Wiley, I think, is closer to DMR than he is Helmer or Okonkwo at this point.
I would agree with that. Now, I don't think the DMR has done much, but outside of one very nice leap and catch in the middle of the field by Wiley, he hasn't done much either. And you can't take away a catch like that, but Winston was in position to destroy him, if it was a live play. So I just think Wiley, I don't know, there's something missing there.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where you talk about traits, and the traits are there for Josh Wiley. He's big, he's moderately fast, but he just doesn't seem to produce. They kind of went away from that with Helm, who really isn't a tradey guy, but he finds a way to get open. He was great at Texas. So we'll see. Maybe Helm can be the difference. Instead of Chig and Wiley, who are these athletes, they found a guy who just plays football.
Plays tight end. I would think that if Wiley comes free, I haven't looked at the depth chart in New England, but I would imagine he'd get a look from Vrabel and Stretch up there and Cowden.
There are probably very few Titans that Vrabel wouldn't at least take a look at. I mean, Gibbons obviously was the big one that when he got released, you knew exactly where he was heading before he even hit the free agency market. I do think it's a good point from the caller, though, Bob, that in terms of this season and Cam Ward's development, the Chig and Helm are probably more important than Bryce Oliver and Chim DK, because I would venture to guess that Helm's going to be on the field a lot more than those guys are.
Yeah, certainly. At the beginning, on opening day, unquestionably.
So tight end is going to be a focus too, but obviously, wide receiver with McLaurin out there, reason to talk about that group today. That'll just about do it for us on the debut show of Next Man Up. PK, it's been fun.
I appreciate you having me on such a important day for you. So I appreciate the chance. Good luck to you with this. And everybody out there, don't block the box. Be sure to lock your locks.
Been a ton of fun with Paul Kuharsky today. Excited to do it again soon. Big thanks to Connor Newt. Again, tomorrow is our first TD Tuesday. Teron Davenport will join me from 9 to 12 on Next Man Up. Chase and Big Joe coming up next. You're on 102.5 The Game.